Okay, hello everyone. Please, does anyone have any issues with recording the meeting? Okay, so I'm recording the meeting. Good afternoon once again, and welcome to Rockford University Braun Seminar. I would like to start by thanking Rockford University, the Philanthropy and Alumni Engagement, and everyone who joins us today. Thank you for supporting the series. This series is organized by Professor Marilyn Loyola and myself. We have Dr. Gina Braun today. Dr. Gina Braun is the Education Department Chair and Director of Special Education. She graduated with her PhD in Special Education from University of Illinois at Chicago in 2019, with her research focusing on student literacy development and pre-service and in-service teacher preparation, such as experiential learning experiences to enhance pre-service special educators' literacy instruction and living in Tier 2 educators' perceptions of MTSS in urban schools. Dr. Braun teaches many preparation courses for students seeking degrees in special education, including foundations of special education assessment, methods for teaching reading, and supporting social and emotional development. Dr. Braun's work is committed to finding ways to challenge current practices and enhance equitable opportunities for all students from pre-K to 12th through higher education. Such a strong CV, Gina. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Braun. Stage is yours, Gina.
Thank you, Orhan, and thanks for reading the mouthful. I appreciate it. And a warm welcome. Thank you, Orhan and Marlene, for having me here today, and thank you for all of the faculty and colleagues and staff who have joined us. I'm really excited to engage in a discussion around dismantling ableism. So while I will lecture a tiny bit, I really want to open this up to a safe space and conversation for all, so that we can continue to do the work around really all the isms in our world of higher education in our society, and ableism just being one of those sort of focused on today. So I am, how do I, oh, sorry. Okay, so I'm going to give a little bit of an overview of what is ableism, talk specifically about ableism in higher education, and then have conversations around challenging ableism, really coming up with some action steps to that we can all take back to our settings and can think about how we're going to make our teaching, our instruction, our work more accessible for all students. I do want to mention that there are a couple of things you will notice today in this presentation that are already considering how to make learning and teaching more accessible to students. So first and foremost, you'll notice that there is a light background with a dark text. And so that strong contrast really supports anybody that might have a visual impairment. It is a light yellow background. Of course, students with who are colorblind may not be able to see that, and so verbally stating that gives, again, accessibility to the students so they understand what they're looking at. In addition, you'll notice that there is the closed captioning going on, which is a way, again, to support students that perhaps are deaf and hard of hearing, and other reasons why it might just be easier. Some are more auditory or visual learners, and to have that visual paired with the auditory is really helpful to learners. Another thing you'll see in a few minutes are alt texts. You might have noticed it on the flyer. So anytime there is an image or a visual that you utilize in your instruction, pairing that with a small caption to explain what's going on in the image really helps with anybody, again, who might be visually impaired, or if the image is just not loading on the screen or something like that, then they at least know what they're looking at or what they could be looking at. A few disclaimers today. I do want to mention that there is a difference between special education and disability studies. And I come to you today as an ally of individuals with disabilities, but my background is 20 years of special education. And so, however, while I've learned a lot about ableist in ableism, especially ableism in higher ed, ableism in K-12 instruction. I am definitely by no means a huge expert on this area. I do have to give credit to my colleagues in the world of disability studies who have been doing this work longer than the special educators. Historically, special educators, while well-intended, have been seen to be more ableist. And so just more recently, I would say that the world of special educators have been learning more and understanding more about how to remove and reduce ableism. I also want to mention I am able-bodied and I am neurotypical. So while I do not have a disability, I'm here again, as I mentioned, as an ally, and my work is really grounded in other scholars that are doing this work in ableist work, as well as individuals, and many of those being individuals with various disabilities. I invite the session, I like to do my session invitations. I recently attended a webinar on ableism, and Melissa McFeeder, she's a great advocate and sort of coach for K-12 teachers. And so I attended her webinar, and she started off with these particular session invitations from both Glenn Singleton's Courageous Conversations for Race and Done for DD White Labor Collective Community Agreements. So this conversation might get a little bit tough. You might feel a little uncomfortable, and that's okay. That's what we're here for, to have these discussions. Just remember to stay engaged. It's okay to experience some discomfort. Accept non-closure, speak your truth if you're comfortable doing so, or at least reflect on it. Take collective and individual ownership. We always assume best intentions, and remember that there's work, there is no quick fix. So I hope we walk away today with a few action steps that'll support us in taking the next step to remove ableism from our institution. So I'm going to stop talking now for a minute, and I do want to let you know that I know that in a lot of brown bag lectures, they tend to lecture and then have questions at the end. This is going to run a little bit differently. So we're going to have discussions throughout, and feel free at any point to ask questions, whether it's verbally or in the chat. I think we're a small enough group that we can just sort of engage in those questions and discussions throughout. So to start us off, what do you know about ableism? Take a minute to reflect, share out loud, or feel free to put it in the chat.
You able to see the subtitles? Everyone able to see the subtitles?
Is everyone able to see the closed captioning?
Yes, if I turn it on, you have to click to I can turn it off, but when I do, it works. Yeah.
Okay. Where did you turn it on at, Kyle?
You have to click on live transcript.
Yeah, there's a live transcript button. It's just right next to the share screen, record reactions. It's just one of those big buttons.
Oh, so each person has to turn it on themselves.
That's my guess. I got an announcement when I first joined that said, hey, just so you know, these are on, and I didn't see them, but when I clicked it, then I did turn them on. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
So let's discuss, what do we know about ableism, or what do we not know anything? Is this a brand new word for us? Are we Googling it right now?
I'm Googling it right now.
Thank you for your honesty.
I'm totally
Gina,
out of the area, so I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I was gonna say, I don't know a lot about it. I'm learning more about it, but I do a unit about it in dance history. So we talk about ableism in terms of dance and differently able bodies in the dance world. But I know less about it in terms of making things digitally accessible and things of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of bouncing off Lindsay, a lot of my work is in audio recording, sound editing, things like that. So of course we talk a lot about transcripts, captions, ways to make digital stuff like that accessible. But like Lindsay said, I feel like there's a whole world of accessibility that I'm, and ableism specifically, I'm not as familiar.
And I think to both of your points that, within each of our own fields and worlds, we'll make it work for us, right? So you make accessibility work for your discussions, for your content, right? This is not a special ed only thing or a teacher only thing, you know, a K-12 teacher thing. It's thinking about how you make your learning accessible to all students. And so it might look different for everyone. Thanks for sharing. What other thoughts come to mind?
I think for me, just thinking about like how ableism is just so typical in our systems. I want to understand that, you know, just thinking about things like attendance policies and things like that for students. I just want to have these conversations so that I can really surface where I am, where I need to grow in my own practice and making my courses accessible to all students, because many disabilities are invisible. And so how do we make students feel safe to ask for what they need without making them feel like they have to disclose everything that's going on in their life, while also knowing what to do about it? Because I'm still learning how to teach online and I have a long ways to go. So I just want to know, as I learn, what are the best ways that I can change my practice to make everybody, to make my content accessible to everyone.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. I think I'm in the same place, still learning, always learning, right? How to do this work.
Well, I have to admit, I'm a little bit apprehensive because I think, and I hope I'm wrong, but I'm hoping I don't find out that I'm doing everything incorrectly. So, you know, I teach adapted PE, and so that's, I think this will be really helpful, but you know, the terminology changes through the years, and you know, what it might have been called before, it's called something else. And so I'm just really hoping that I'm relaying the correct messages and using the correct terminology. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's what a big part of this talk today is about. I'm going to do a whole slide on terminology, what to say and what not to say. And you're right, Tammy, it's constantly changing. And so it's okay to make mistakes because it is constantly changing. And, you know, as long as we are, as scholars and as educators, no matter if we're business professors or preparing teachers, or preparing, you know, anybody in the field, you want to be thinking about, you know, again, how that looks in your field and how we can, as you know, using our privilege of being faculty and staff in higher ed institutions, really leave a mark on our students to understand and accept all. No matter what you're doing in the field, you're going to encounter individuals with disabilities, and they have without a doubt, have experienced some type of ableism and discrimination. And so we just really have to be in the know as much as possible. Okay, so I don't know why it doesn't want to change. Okay, here we go. I'm going to show a little short video. It's about 2 minutes long. A lot of ableist work is grounded in the first thing you want to learn when you're learning about ableism is the difference between the medical model of disability and the social model of disability. Can you just give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down? Have you ever heard of those, medical model versus social model? If you've heard of it, thumbs up. If you haven't, thumbs down. Okay, good. Then I'm giving you something new to learn. So I'm going to play a very short video, as I said, about 2.5 minutes to give us a brief overview of medical versus social model. Hopefully you can all hear it. The volume comes up in a second. It's not quite in the beginning.
According to the medical model of disability, the word disabled means less able. Less able to achieve your potential, less able to have meaningful relationships, less able to play an active part in the world around you, and that this is just your bad luck.
Gina, is this a video or just a
outdated view of the world?
Can you see the video on your screen?
No, just the sound.
Huh. Oh, that's so interesting. Thank you for Can you see my shared screen?
We see your presentation, maybe,
It's not running through the presentation though. It's not running through the video.
maybe close your presentation, let's just turn it off and then turn the video on.
What about now? Is it moving now?
No,
Huh. All right, hold on, sorry, everyone.
stop sharing your presentation, maybe that would, maybe.
Sorry. Now I can't find you or everyone see the screen. So Orhan, can you go to slide 7?
Which is 7, is this 7?
Oh my gosh, you're back now. Okay, I can, clearly it didn't want me to share. No, don't do the video because it'll destroy your screen apparently. Just
I don't
go
think
to the
so.
next
Seriously.
slide.
Seriously.
No, it's okay. It's okay. Just go to the next slide. We don't need to watch it. We can move
Okay.
on. Everybody can have access to this and watch it on their own time. Okay, so on this slide, I can see, this is amazing. Thank you, Orhan. On this slide, if you had to guess based on what we just discussed, which picture is social model, which picture is medical model?
Left is medical.
Yep, very good. The left is the medical model. The individual is centered in the middle as the problem. And we have to fix the problem. And then on the right-hand side, again, we see this individual that is not a problem, but that society creates the problems for them. And you can see here the alt text. That's another resource to really, I encourage as much as possible to add alt text to your presentations when you're instructing. There are a lot of website, there's different programs out there that create alt text. I did mess around with the Google Chrome extension version where you don't have to type it yourself and you can put the image and they'll give you an alt text. Though the Google Chrome one is not that great. Some of the pictures work, some of them don't. For example, yesterday I was looking at Rockford University's emblem under the Google Chrome extension for alt text, and it said it was a vandalized stop sign. So I thought that was pretty funny. So I don't necessarily recommend using it, but there are some out there, although you can always just, type it in yourself. It is a great accessibility tool for all students. Okay, Orhan, next slide.
So Gina, I have a question.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about disability, the range of differently abled, like modes of differently abledness are so wide and wide ranging that I think it's one of the challenges as educators is to kind of cover all of those bases. Like, how do you know that you're making the accommodations for, I don't know if you can make accommodations for all of them, right? Especially for the ones that you may not be aware of.
Mm-hmm. Great question. I think one of the first things we can start with is, and many of us did a presentation on this for some of the new faculty a few weeks ago, is universal design, because it gives you a framework to think about, Marlene, that can help you sort of think about the broader picture and teaching to the margins. So you don't have to know every disability in your class. You don't have to know every individual need of every student in your class. But if you design your courses universally using the framework that they kind of recommend, then you're really touching on many of the needs of your students. You still may not touch on every single need of all of the students, but you're doing a better job than you are if you don't universally design, right? And then it's really about having, you and I have had conversations with,
Sorry.
no worries.
The link is gone. I'm sorry.
That looks fun. That's not in my world. You're teaching so you still will have to do some individualized accommodations, but that's going to be more like based on having conversations with students and things like that. So I recommend starting with the broader universal design for learning and then considering And then considering where students are still not having access and talking with students. Marlene, you and I have had many conversations about how you support students, right? And so I think that's a great example, like having those individual conversations.
That makes sense. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Mhm. So this is the most recent working definition of ableism. There are a lot of definitions out there, as many of you probably Googled and saw. But this one is written by Talila Lewis, or they like to be called TL. They are an advocate and social justice warrior, doing a lot of amazing work with oppressed groups, specifically around disabilities, specifically around really all BIPOC. And so this is the most recent definition. They are constantly changing their definition. So this one was recently written in January of 21. Can I have a volunteer read it for me? And while reading it, while you're listening to it being read, think about these questions on the side. What comes to mind when you hear this definition? What are some thoughts you have or challenges to the definition? And if anybody would like to volunteer, I would greatly appreciate it. If not, you can continue to listen to my voice.
I'll give it a shot.
Thanks, Kyle.
Ableism, a system that places value on people's bodies and minds based on societally constructed ideas of normality, intelligence, excellence, desirability, and productivity. These constructed ideas are deeply rooted in anti-Blackness, eugenics, misogyny, colonialism, imperialism, and capitalism. This form of systemic oppression leads to people and society determining who is valuable and worthy based on a person's language, appearance, religion, and or their ability to satisfactorily reproduce, excel, and behave. You do not have to be disabled to experience ableism.
Thank you, Kyle. So there's a lot to unpack there, right? What are some initial thoughts?
Well, I'll tell you an initial thought that maybe isn't related to ableism is I now know what my students feel like when I say, would anybody like to read that passage? Because I kind of looked at it and was a little bit intimidated by some of the words. So I wonder if one of the things, I don't know if that's what you were getting at, but I learned once when I actually, and you did a nice job because you actually asked for volunteers. I made the mistake of saying, so-and-so, please read the passage on page, and I picked a kid who was dyslexic. And I mean, he was totally, and I never did it again, the know better, do better. But that, and I know that isn't really what you were trying to get across when it comes to ableism, but that was like, I actually felt I was in the shoes of my student who I had called, like if you had called on me, I might have been like, oh boy, I hope I don't butcher these words, right? So I think it's a big definition that really encompasses a whole lot of things. It's a long answer to a short question, sorry.
Yeah, I think you brought up a lot of really great points right there in that example. Thinking about the needs of your students, right? And what this might invoke, what kind of participation might invoke in classroom, right? The level of participation you're asking for, and how can you be more accessible to all students? I love that. That wasn't intended, but I love that you brought that up. Thank you.
And
The
Gina,
last sentence is striking, at least from my perspective.
What's that, Orhan?
The last sentence is striking. Like,
Yeah.
you don't have to be disabled to experience ableism.
Mm-hmm.
and I think, Gina, that it looks, to piggyback off of what Tammy said, it seems like a theoretical framework more than a definition. But it also is written in a way that makes me want to learn more. Like, I'm like, I don't really know, like, especially that last sentence, like, wait a minute, like, tell me more about that,
Mm-hmm. So TL's blog is actually linked here where it says T. Lewis. And so you can read about the great work that they're doing and dig more into this. This is exactly how I felt about 2 years ago when I learned what the term ableism, like I learned the term ableism and I thought I need to learn more. And so I've just kept going because you're right. There's a lot more to this. And we need to keep doing this work, right? And this is like a snapshot of this work, right? So other thoughts on the definition?
I think you had posted this on Facebook at some point right before I was putting together materials for what I use this for dance history. And so I use this definition in my class. And I think, you know, we kind of talked about what it means and why I like this definition is because it takes it into a more broad discussion about why we're deciding somebody is more valuable or less valuable or worthy. And so I like that second paragraph because it's not just talking about what is disability or what are differently abled bodies. We're opening it up, or they're opening it up in a way that kind of makes you look at, well, why are we looking at this person as differently abled and why are they less worthy because of that? So I really appreciated you sharing this whenever you did, because I was like, oh, wow, that's amazing.
Was it me or was it Kristen? I feel like I don't remember posting it. It could have been.
It might have been Kristen. I don't know, but somebody shared this particular definition and I was really glad.
Gina, do you have specific examples that you might have experienced or heard?
Yeah, so we're going to do that and we're going to get there. So I promise we'll see. And I know we're running out of time because we had 12 minutes of technical difficulties, but we're going to move through it as much as possible. Can you go to the next slide, Orhan?
I hope I don't open my presentation. Okay. Is this right?
Next slide.
Is this right?
No, it's still the ableism slide, the definition.
So you pick.
I don't see any movement. I just see the same slide.
Oh, you don't see any movement?
No.
Maybe it's. Do you see the presentation moving, guys? Or is it?
Nope, we all see the definition still.
Just a second. Give me a second. I think my computer had the same problem.
I've never seen a slideshow able to shut down multiple computers.
Yeah, this is wild. Okay, great. This is I love that we're here on this. Okay, thank you, Orhan. Maybe just leave it right here. Okay, so the disabilities do's and don'ts. To Tammy's point about language always changing, there is a lot always changing. I'm going to go through this as fast as I can to get everybody, you know, to pull away with some important information here. Number one, we need to normalize talking about disabilities, not be afraid of saying the word disability, not being afraid to talk about disabilities. They are real. They are, you know, what used to be quote unquote scary and stigmatized, but we need to get rid of that. And we need to talk about disabilities as something that is different, but not worse, right? Not less than. There is a big controversy out there, the difference between person first and identity first language, not really a controversy. So those of you that have never heard of this before, person first versus identity first, it is really about identity. And so having conversations with students about identity, and I know many of you probably do that in the context of your courses, but here what we're talking about is back before sort of identity first was a thing, person first was the rule of thumb. It is written into APA as that's the APA format that you should be writing. Person first meaning you put the person before the disability. So the girl with autism, the educator in a wheelchair. The second one, identity first, puts the disability first. So the autistic girl, the deaf girl. Now, the rule of thumb, as I said, is always to go with person first. However, certain communities, in particular, autism and deaf, have come out that they want and prefer identity first because they feel that person first makes it sound as if there's something wrong with their disability. And so putting it second means that like we're putting it to the side, we're putting it last. It's not, there's something wrong with it, where they are out and proud to be autistic and deaf in the community. That's not to say that all autistic individuals or deaf individuals want identity first. So rule of thumb, person first, but it is always best to talk to our students, to talk to individuals about their preferred identity here. In your classes, it's great to bring forth, just like in Kristen and my courageous conversation, we've all had these conversations before, incorporating literature, podcasts, webinars, media with individuals that are from the BIPOC community. We also want to do that with individuals who have disabilities. Shine light on the great work individuals with disabilities are doing in the field. Talk with your students about ableism. I can't tell you how many times I've walked past a group of college students and I've heard them say, oh man, that's so retarded, you know, and like, we know retarded is one of the big ones we never should use, right? But kids use that in like a fun, playful way. However, it is obviously very discriminatory, but there are way more words now that fit that. And if we don't talk about it, then nobody will know how discriminatory that language really is. And so call students out. Like if I walk past a group of kids and I hear them say retarded, like I call them out on it. So let's do that and be advocates and allies for individuals with disabilities, because you never know who you're offending. So the don'ts. We no longer really use in our field the phrase special needs. I still kind of use it because it's something we've always used, but special needs, the world of disabilities, they say that by saying it's a special need, that means that that their needs are special and something's wrong with them, right? That's how they feel this term has been utilized. So yes, they have needs, but they are not, there's nothing wrong with their needs. So we don't need to say that. Other phrases like suffers from, oh, they suffer from autism. Well, advocates in the disability community and individuals with autism would not say that they are suffering from autism. They are autistic, and that is a part of them, and they're not suffering with that. Other language that really has been used over time has been turned discriminatory towards individuals with disabilities, especially the mental health field. Words like lame, nuts, crazy. We want to remove that from our vocabulary as much as possible. I use crazy all the time. I tell my students not to use it, and then I tell them to call me out on using it. And so there's resources in the presentation that lead to some examples of other language we can use. But again, having conversations with our students about this, I think, is really important. We do want to avoid euphemisms, and I did hear it a couple times in this presentation, but don't worry, I'm not mad. I'm glad that you used it, and because I wanted to bring to your attention phrases like differently abled and handy capable were created as a fluffy euphemism to protect individuals with disabilities, to not say the word disabled, or to not say that a person has a disability, but the individuals in the world of disabilities will say, do not use euphemisms like differently abled. Just say what they have. Again, it's putting this idea that what they have as their disability is something wrong, and we should use fluffy terms like these. And it's okay that we are still all learning this. So in the book that I read, Academic Ableism, again, there's an image of this in this presentation. He really talks about not making excuses like, oh, I didn't know I should do that, or I didn't know that. No, just stop and just move forward. Keep moving forward on being the best, educator for your students. Don't apologize, just move forward. Learn from your implicit bias, from the way society has treated individual disabilities, and keep moving forward. Can you go to the next slide?
If I can, yes.
Maybe.
So my computer froze too, interestingly.
While he's working on switching, are there any questions or wonderings here? Anything?
Did it move, Gina?
Nope, we're still seeing do's and don'ts. Just glad it wasn't just me.
I think this, I don't know. Maybe the text. Something is wrong with the presentation.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I mean. Okay, so another book I put on here is a resource and a book I love, the Disability, written by Emily Ladau. And this just really drives the point home. Avoiding the word disability isn't dismantling ableism, it is perpetuating it. So don't be afraid, if I haven't made that clear, don't be afraid to use the terms.
So if I'm not mistaken, Gina, you are recommending to use disability, the word disability, but not the special needs. Is this right?
Yeah.
Okay. Shall I change it?
Yes, please. I know that was a lot of effort for you to change just to the quote.
Did it change?
Nope. Questions or thoughts, as we're kind of wrapping up time, I want to make sure that we, share more. Obviously over planned, which is fine, but plus I didn't plan for so many technical difficulties.
Or what now?
Nope. Anything that stuck out to you on the do's and don'ts chart that makes you think differently?
You don't see interesting facts?
Nope.
Gina, I don't know if you guys can hear me. Can you guys hear me?
We do.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Because my computer's frozen too and I can't see anything or none of the buttons are working.
It's contagious.
It's a Rockfield Wise problem.
But I think the do's and don'ts chart is really helpful. I think that it's something that makes all of this seem less overwhelming and like, even though there's a lot more to learn about why and what, it's helpful to have that chart so that, like Tammy said, so we know like what to say, what not to say, and how to frame things. So thank you for that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing the feedback. I appreciate it. Now I just lost, can you guys still hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, all I see is a big black screen now.
This is a little frightening.
I know.
What is happening?
I don't know.
And it's quite worrisome to me because I do this next week, Monday.
Don't worry, Tammy. It's all gonna work out. So,
But you are ridiculously adaptable. So good job.
we make it work. All right. Well, while I can't see anything, I'm gonna read some interesting facts. I don't know if you can see interesting facts or Hans or not, but I'm going to read the facts, and you all have access again to this presentation. So in higher ed, we know that higher ed, I'm sure all of you have heard, the ivory steps, right? And so we know that the challenges that many individuals have of climbing the ivory steps to getting a higher ed degree. And that obviously includes individuals with disabilities. So from the academic ableism book that Jay Dolmage wrote, these were some of the facts that really stood out to me. So 13% of individuals with disabilities have bachelor's degree compared to 31% without disabilities. And this one really stuck out to me. So while there has been an upward trend of individuals with disabilities enrolling in higher education to get degrees, only 2/3 of individuals with disabilities are unable to complete their degree, which was really shocking to me. And another thing that the author pointed out a lot of was regarding the fact that higher ed institutions, and I'm sure this is not a surprise to any of you, are obviously run like businesses, and what they consider investing in the supports for individuals with disabilities takes away money from their business. And so, so that is why we are dismantling ableism in higher ed, right? That's why I'm having this conversation, because that's not fair. Those that do make it, just those with individuals that do disabilities who do make it to doctoral degrees and things like that, they tend to not get tenure track positions. They are usually hired as lecturers or adjuncts. Only 3% of tenure track professors have disabilities. And intersectionality, there's obviously a major intersectionality of disability with other oppressed groups. This is just one example, but Black males are often overrepresented in K-12 settings as being diagnosed or identified as having multiple disabilities. However, there is less access to accommodations and the supports for Black males once they get to higher ed. So they've been diagnosed, they've been sort of supported in K-12, and then they get to higher ed, and there's not enough supports for them. So those were just some of the initial sort of stats and facts that stuck out to me in this book that I thought was worthy of bringing to your attention to really sit with and think about, you know, as educators, what should we be doing? And with that, I know we're about out of time. So, you know, I can stick around for a couple of minutes, but right, if I'm right, it ends at 10 to 4. Did I lose everyone?
I don't know the answer to that. I would like to know the answer to that though, too.
Okay. Well, if anybody needs to
Selfishly.
go, feel free to go. If not, I'll stick around for a few minutes. There was, you know, a lot more to this presentation that I would, you know, really it was more about discussions. And to Orhan's original question, there was a couple of scenarios in there of scenarios for, you know, students who have experienced ableism in their classrooms, along with some information around, like, you know, accommodating in our disability services. Kara Bolt was going to join us to talk a little bit about it. I overplanned.
I
I'm here
was
to
under the
talk.
impression that you had an hour, but that I had an hour too. I could be wrong. So I plan to stick around.
Okay.
And Gina, I appreciate you persevering through all of this tech like issues. And I think you should do a part 2, like, because I would like to have a conversation about like what is a policy that is like an attendance